Well, good morning, everybody. It's a little bit after 10 o'clock right now, and it's time for IT in 10. Happy May, beautiful spring day here in the city of Chicago. Today, we're going to be talking about the six-figure IT career, how to get a career in IT that pays you six figures. And I'm going to show my age here a little bit. I can't help but be reminded of Steve Martin. Back when Steve Martin was better known as a stand-up comedian, I remember having one of his record albums when I was a kid. Now I'm really dating myself, but he used to have a joke, how to become a millionaire in 3 easy steps. Step one, get $1 million. How to get a six-figure IT career? Well, step one, find somebody that's willing to pay you over $100,000. All kidding aside, we'll talk about pathways today. We're not going to talk specifically about a career that pays six figures. We're going to talk about it in the context of starting at the entry level. What can you expect to make? Where's the mid-level? What are the skills that reinforce that? And then that top tier. And for both pathways we're going to talk about today, the top tier can pay well into the six figures. Just a reminder as we go forward, I have everybody muted. So if you have questions, feel free to use the chat window through GoToMeeting. So we'll split things up into two different pathways today, two broad career pathways. The first one is IT infrastructure, certainly the one in the WIOA system that we're probably the most familiar with. Also certainly where most of the training is. People are coming into American job centers these days saying, hey, I want to become a help desk person. I want to work in IT. And really when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about people working for a managed services firm, for a larger enterprise, even small and mid-sized businesses where you're there to support the physical infrastructure of the network, fixing the machines, hooking up the networks physically together, setting up the wireless access points, installing software certainly, but your piece there ends at the installation of the software and some support of the software perhaps, but you're not writing the code. That's actually the second pathway that we'll talk about broadly today, the programming and development piece. By far, this one pays more actually than infrastructure. Huge demand right now for folks who have coding skills, who can work in that kind of environment. Here we're talking about identifying the business requirements, creating a piece of software, creating a web-based application that can meet those business requirements, and then supporting it and changing it and upgrading it as necessary. You know, starting with that first piece, the infrastructure piece, well, the entry-level spot is, as always, the help desk technician, level 1 help desk, level 2 help desk. Here in the Chicagoland area, you know, you're typically looking at around 30 to 40K a year. A lot of this work is hourly work, so you're looking, you know, somewhere in the $15 to $20 range. The data we're getting, the data for this one, all the data we'll talk about today when it comes to salary and job titles. A lot of great spaces on the internet to go for this kind of thing. Glassdoor, PayScale. Obviously, the BLS has a lot of wage data that's a little bit tedious to plod through, and honestly, also our experience here at the IT Sector Center. What we see a lot of, you know, for somebody with 0 to 2 years experience, you're probably going to wind up in an hourly job somewhere in that $15 to $18 range. You can expect to stay there, you know, up till about 5 years, which would lead us to that mid-level piece. Here, you know, you'll see administrator and engineer associated with these titles, manager certainly. The expectation at this piece is that you've moved your way up from the level 1, level 2 help desk. Now you're managing a team of people that do that work that you used to do. And obviously your pay increases accordingly. You'll be somewhere in the $60,000 to $70,000 range. More experience, you know, certainly 10 years plus, 10 to 20 years. Well, here you see a lot of job titles with senior or director or CIO. And here, you know, you're talking about managing groups of smaller teams. You're talking about managing organizations. You're responsible for the entire IT infrastructure of a given enterprise. And this is where you do get into those six-figure salaries. But you can't, just as you wouldn't start a book on the last page, this is a progression here. You can't have a career changer come in and expect to be an IT director straight off the bat. You know, as far as skill sets, the entry-level piece involves a lot of the certifications that we've talked a ton about here on IT in 10. That first step, the table stakes to a career in IT, The CompTIA certifications, certainly, A+, Net+, Security+, the Cisco entry-level certification, referred to as CCENT, also one of the most recognized vendor-backed certifications for an entry-level IT career. ITIL Foundations. ITIL stands for Information Technology Infrastructure Library, and think of it as the quality management system for running an IT department. How do we create tickets? How do we respond to requests? What are the services that we provide to our clients? ITIL Foundations gives folks the backbone when it comes to that kind of work. At the mid-level, here you'll certainly start to see a lot of requirements for some of the mid-level certifications. Microsoft, the MCSA, Microsoft Certified Systems Associate. Cisco Associate class, what we mean by that is the CCNA, Cisco Certified Network Associate. And if you go back a few weeks to one of our previous episodes, we talk a lot about the different disciplines that are involved in the CCNA certification. Certainly the most popular one, CCNA routing and switching. When it comes to WIOA-funded IT training here in Chicago, the approved programs, you see a lot of CCNA routing and switching. And that's the basics on how to use a Cisco router, how to wire these networks together. Another piece that you'll start to see a lot of here is this idea of virtualization, taking larger servers and creating virtual environments, virtual smaller machines within larger servers. Obviously, the pay scale goes up appropriately. When you move up to that senior level, PMP, still the gold standard when it comes to project management. Not a requirement at this level, but certainly something that if a senior level person wants to make that next step, something they need to look hard at. Can they manage a project internally effectively? The project management professional credential was developed around an IT framework. And this is also where you see, whether they be vendor-backed certifications or industry-neutral certifications, a lot of the advanced ones. IT security, we've talked about. Certainly the MCSE, Microsoft Certified Solutions Expert, CCNP, Cisco Certified Network Professional. And then you want to make sure at this level that they have either familiarity with or training in the kinds of skills that you would expect a senior level manager to have. Can they manage people effectively? Do they know how to do purchasing? Do they know the process of getting a good price on equipment for, say, a larger enterprise? Now we'll move on to the software development side now. At the entry level, the most common job title is just that, software developer, and you'll notice the pay scale here is significantly higher. It's double or more for the entry-level spot at this position, and this is the person just involved in working on a team of coders to develop an application. After you've had that exposure, after you've improved your skills, the mid-level, the job titles, you're going to see senior, you'll see engineer dropped in a lot. We'll talk a little bit about the kinds of skills that you need in the development marketplace, but you'll start to see a specialization here. Hey, I've got a ton of familiarity with .NET, which is a development framework, and obviously the pay goes up accordingly. At the senior level, 10 years experience or more, this is where you see you'll see lead a lot in here. Senior architect is in here. These are people that are managing teams of software developers. They're developing not just the software at this point, but they're certainly working with the business units directly to come up with requirements and come up with testing to make sure that the work of the team is being developed effectively. The skill sets themselves they're a little bit different on the development side, and there's not a ton of WIOA-backed training for this, but I think it's important to have this discussion because first off, I think there should be, and second off, this is a question I'm sure as career coaches that you guys are going to start to get. What the phrase you'll hear thrown out a lot is this idea of, I'm a full stack developer. And what this traditionally has meant is that you have exposure to all of the different areas that development touches. We'll walk through kind of an updated version of this. By system administration, we mean you're familiar with how to store these web applications, say, that you're developing. Certifications aren't really called for here per se, but you'll hear things like Amazon Web Services thrown out. Rackspace is another one you'll hear thrown out a lot. Linux, for those of you who are familiar with operating systems of servers and machines, this is how from the administration side, this is the base layer. When we develop an application, we load it into a system. Where are we putting it? Where are we storing it? Well, we're storing it in the cloud, on the Amazon cloud. We're storing it at Rackspace, and we interact with these things through the Linux operating system. UI, UX, user experience and user interface. As we develop these tools, how are our users going to interact with them? Is it the most streamlined way to do it? Is it user-friendly, is the phrase you get thrown out. Part of being a full-stack developer is having that experience to know how to put together a good, say, like I sat through Career Connect training last week, like many people have here in Cook County. Hey, how is that user interface? Is it friendly to use? Is it simple to use? There's a whole discipline here on the development side involved with this idea of user interface, user experience. We all own smartphones, so a lot of certifications out there right now for developing for iOS, the Apple operating system, developing for Android. So if you have a non-Apple phone like me, something that if you're in development right now, you have to be concerned with are the pieces that I'm developing on the web side for web development, are the things that I'm writing in code like HTML or CSS or JavaScript, how do they react in a mobile environment? Is the user experience, going back up the list here, just as friendly when I access a web page on a phone as it is when I access it on my desktop? And like I said, here you'll see things like HTML, Java, JavaScript. Another big piece here is what we do with the data, and I'll go back to our Career Connect, our collective Career Connect experience here in the last few weeks. This system collects a ton of data on our clients and how we're interacting with them and who's approved for what happens to that data. Here, certification in SQL is not entirely inappropriate, but there's a lot of databases out there, SQL, MongoDB, Cassandra. There's all this back end that happens when the data is collected from the user. How is that stored? What do we do with it when we're done with it? How do we make queries of that database to make sure that we're getting a good use of that data? Programming language, you'll hear things like Ruby, PHP, Ruby on Rails, Python, particularly at the associate's degree level. There's some good programs out there, some of which are WIOA approved here in Cook County at community colleges for this kind of learning how to program and the languages that are involved. And first and foremost, and where any discussion of software should start and end, is the business need. What problem are we trying to solve here by developing software? What's the business logic? And by business logic, I mean, what is your workflow? So continuing on with our Career Connect example, when I collect a WIOA application, how do I do it? What data am I asking for from the customer? And what are the rules that I need to implement as I complete an application? All of these things taken in combination, it's kind of an updated version of what a full stack developer is. And the more advanced that you get in your career, certainly when you start, you can specialize in one of these things. You can specialize in user experience, but the deeper and deeper you get into your career, you need to have exposure to all of these things and develop an expertise of some sort in all of these things. You know, so how do we get there? How do we move up that ramp? You know, one thing I like to say to particularly some of the more senior candidates that come across my desk is you have to think in terms of cultivating your career. You can't just start and get A+ certification and a CCNA perhaps, and then stop there and expect that you're going to move up the ladder. Educating yourself has to be a continual process. One of the ways to do that, hey, get involved in, there's a ton of local trade associations and professional development groups around IT infrastructure specifically. The Illinois Technology Association has a big conference actually this week in Chicago, AITP, sponsored by the CompTIA folks actually, and all of these, the Project Management Institute. That's where the PMP certification actually started. It started with a bunch of IT professionals who were involved in project management who all got together and started talking about these common interests, and they developed the certification based on that. When we talk about cultivating a career, we have to make sure our candidates are involved in these organizations at some level, attending a monthly meeting, reaching out to their colleagues, and learning about what's the latest and greatest when it comes to infrastructure technology. You know, programming and development, it's the same kind of it's the same kind of progression, certainly more involved though on educating yourself on those various pieces of being a full stack developer. Ton of great online courseware at any level. you can get exposure to programming in HTML, programming in Ruby. I've listed a few of the vendors out there where you can go for a couple of bucks or free and start to teach yourself how to code. I know a lot of people that have gotten their start that way just with the recognition that, hey, they're going to be starting at the first rung of the ladder. And from that, develop an online portfolio. So when programmers are developing software, either for a company or for themselves, they put them in online libraries, so to speak, repositories of information that are publicly accessible, usually GitHub, one of the most popular ones, but there's other ones out there. And it gives you a spot where you can post your work and then show to a potential employer how you've developed your skills. All right, that wraps up today's episode. We'll see you again at the end of the month. I'm looking at my chat window right now. Monique rightly points out that if you're looking for some of the previous episodes that I've referenced here, feel free to go to the YouTube channel, the National Able YouTube channel. There's a whole segment where you can pop yourself a bowl of popcorn and binge watch all. I think this is episode 12 right now, and learn all about IT. In the meantime, if you have questions for a future episode, feel free to email me directly at djacobs@nationalable.org. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll see you again at the end of the month.